Welcome to the WorkLife Wellbeing podcast. Digital financial advisor Open Money launched their low-cost employee benefit solution, WorkLife, to help employers put their employees first by enabling them to offer financial advice, tools, and support through the workplace. Not stopping there, WorkLife by Open Money expanded their offering to include a broad range of benefits to support their employees' overall well-being that might usually be out of reach for many businesses. My name's Leah Heath, and I'm your host for this podcast. Over this 6-part series, I am going to be joined by special guests to discuss all areas of well-being. Today, we're discussing social well-being. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WorkLife Wellbeing podcast. Today's podcast topic is social well-being. Social well-being is probably not one of the more well-known aspects of well-being, but at WorkLife by Open Money, we agree that it is just as important as the rest. So today, I am joined by a very special guest, Lily Shippen. Lily owns a company that connects startups, high net worth individuals, and blue chip companies with exceptional executive and business support professionals. And this is both in the UK and internationally. Essentially, networking and social wellbeing is bread and butter of what this woman does. So I'm really excited to have her on the Work-Life Wellbeing podcast today to talk about social wellbeing. So how are you, Lily?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much. That was a very nice introduction.
You're very welcome. It's very well deserved, I'm sure. But as you know, social wellbeing is about relationships and feeling a sense of purpose within social groups. It comes from regular positive social contact from specific persons or groups of people. So this is everything from your friends and family to colleagues, and it can come from other groups that you might not think of, such as sports teams, churches, or a volunteer organisation. And having a good balance of dependence and independence also ensures that you have positive social well-being. Now, with Lily, we are going to discuss the importance of networking and social well-being within the business world to keep it sort of work-life-y. Work-life-y, that's a new word. But firstly, as this area of well-being might be fairly new to people listening to this, I'm going to firstly ask you, Lily, what is your understanding of social well-being and what does it mean to you personally?
I think for me, social well-being is about essentially connecting with your community, whether that be with friends or within business. And I think it's about having a strong support network around you and essentially that giving you, a sense of purpose, but also, a place where, you can talk to people and I suppose kind of discuss challenges that you might be going through or what have you. But I think it's really about that sense of community, whichever way, however you get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult to think sometimes, I think, of social well-being within work because a lot of people tend to separate work life, the shameless plug there, work life and home life. But as we've lived through a global pandemic and we're working from home, it's more difficult to separate the two. So I think it's quite important to understand what social wellbeing means to us and not just how it means to, what we do on a Saturday evening, but how it actually relates to our work as well. So on that thread, how important do you think social wellbeing is for SMEs and their owners?
I think it's incredibly important. I think running a business, can be incredibly lonely at times, especially, the last 18 months. I think speaking to other owners of SMEs, they've felt lonely. And I think that's in comparison, not to say that the owners of large companies don't feel that, but I think usually within a large company, you would have a board or you'd have a lot of other people around you. I think that social well-being for SMEs and their owners is absolutely crucial. And I think it's interesting what you say around, a lot of people keep their work and their personal life separate. I think when you run a business, I think that's often, certainly for me, that is your baby. And you don't have that kind of, your work life does blend into your personal life, I suppose. And if work is really challenging, as it has been for so many people over the last 18 months, 2 years, I think that if you're struggling in that sense, then usually that does impact your personal life as well. So I think to have that feeling of community in work, that makes you feel happier at home, and vice versa. So yeah, I think that it's really important, and that's something that has for me has been even more important in recent times.
And what's good as well, I guess, is you've got to recognise what is good for you. And for you as a small business owner, I can imagine having that network of other small business owners around you can help that feeling of loneliness. So, I mean, I see it all the time on LinkedIn. People will say, this isn't a social platform, take this off, this should be on Facebook. But actually, if it's helping somebody get through their working day, or it gives somebody a smile, I just think that's great. I mean, I don't have any qualms with that. And also at the end of the day, it's someone's own platform, and it's theirs to choose with what they do. Now I'm a really big fan of LinkedIn. I post on it quite a lot, and I think it's important to be personable on there. Do you think that LinkedIn or social wellbeing has been impacted by the pandemic? Are we doing more of it online? And what do you think the implications of that might be?
Yeah, I think that, you're right. I think that people have posted, I've noticed recently a lot of people, it's interesting because people on LinkedIn tend to, if they put a personal post up, they always kind of caveat it with, I don't usually do a personal post on LinkedIn. But I think that it is really important, because you should, like you say, you've got to be more personable. I think that, when we were in lockdown, for instance, we weren't meeting people organically as like we normally would. Therefore, that posting on LinkedIn, for some people, that might give them that sense of connection with others, and they might not have communities, around them in somewhat in a way that others might. So yeah, I think that it definitely has been impacted. I think that people are a lot more open on social media than maybe they were before, but I also think that comes with its challenges as well, because on social media, I think LinkedIn may be slightly different, but I think certainly for Instagram, I delete it in the week. I don't have it on my phone in the week, because you can go down the rabbit hole, but also, you can compare. And I definitely do that. So I think that can also impact it negatively, in the sense of you don't feel part of sometimes a community, or you don't feel like you're doing the right thing. So I think there's definitely a line, but I think that social media has allowed me to connect with people and to feel that I wasn't on my own during that time, and also when you were struggling, I think it was a good place to kind of, maybe not so much again on LinkedIn, but Twitter I find is a really good kind of the platforms. I use them for different things, but I think that when I was struggling, I would post, or there were times where people would reach out, and I would reach out to others if you felt that they were maybe kind of going through a particularly tough time during that point.
Yeah, and as you said right at the very beginning, having what social wellbeing means to you is having a strong support network, and wanting that support, I believe, is inherently human of us. We are social animals. So yeah, it's interesting that when there's a time when we've been forced to stay inside, a lot of us live by ourselves, and it can be lonely. And having that outlet of social media has been a positive in so many ways. But as you said, there is a flip side that requires us to be critical and honest about how things are making us feel. With the rise of social media in business networking, we've all been to places and handed out business cards, but what do you believe are the positives and benefits of the different ways of networking?
I think in terms of, I think social media has its place, but I think and it can maybe allow you opportunities to connect with people that you then might, you might see them in a room, and actually then you can have a proper conversation with someone because you've got a kind of a foundation. So I think there's positives that come from that, and different things in terms of social media. But I think in terms of face-to-face networking, I think that depending on your personality, because personally I'm someone that really kind of gets my energy off other people, and I prefer forming one-on-one relationships. I think that those types of events are, where you usually get to sit with someone and have a good conversation. I think that those are personally so much more valuable, because not only are you meeting people, hopefully kind of like-minded people, or not even like-minded people, different people. I think that it gives you that feeling after, it kind of fills you up, which we haven't had, and I think, moving off Zoom and Teams and all of those things, I think face-to-face networking, I think are great ways for, professionals to network, whether you work within a business or own a business. I think there's, networking opportunities out there for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I love a face-to-face networking event. I've been as part of what I do at WorkLife by Openly. I like to go and talk to people about well-being. And there's been a bit of a discussion as we go back to the events, the face-to-face events. Is there going to be a decline of them? Will it happen? And then what's going to be the implications of that? Because I sort of think the way I see it is, if we're looking at it from a very superficial view of money, it's more expensive to host people in a venue. It's then expensive for the individuals to get there. They've got to buy lunch and everything, all that sort of thing. And I mean, a lot of places will go, oh, is it more hassle than it's worth? And so I think people are going forward with a more blended approach. But what's your view on the decline of face-to-face events?
See, I wouldn't. So I'm quite picky about the networking events that I attend, because, I'm time poor, and exactly that, for a lot of the time they're in town, and I'll, think, oh, right, well, it's in the evening. I might have to sacrifice the gym. I might have to, drive into town and all of those things. So for me, I'm definitely picky in terms of what I attend. However, I definitely favour a face-to-face networking event than I would going on Zoom. Yes, it might be more efficient, and you can pitch your services, or, I know there's kind of some networking events where you'll have like a minute and you'll talk about it. And yeah, that could be quite good on Zoom. Personally, I wouldn't do that, because, whilst it could be good from a business perspective, actually in terms of what I will get from it, I don't think it would really fill me up. I think that if anything, video Zooms and Teams quite often can leave you feeling quite drained, as it's a different type of energy rather than actually meeting people in a room. So I think it depends on the event, but personally, I go to networking events where I don't really go to events where you kind of mingle around a room, and I get more I prefer forming kind of one-to-one relationships. So the best networking events that I've gone to are dinners with other business owners, where you'll be sat next to someone, and it might not be a business opportunity, but you'll have a good conversation with that person. And I recently joined a networking group where we do breakouts with other business owners, and so you'll spend an hour and a half with that person. It's an all-day event. Those are the things that I would sacrifice my time for. That one particularly, I go, it's a day a month, so it's a commitment, but I feel like I would get more from that personally, because it pushes me. And I think that you've always got to, personally, I like to be surrounding myself with people that are better than me, so that drive me, than kind of going to loads of different networking events all across town and kind of spreading myself thin. So I think maybe in that respect, there might be more of a blended approach, because people might have the same mentality and might only go to one or two a month, as opposed to, previously, I think you can spend your life networking, and that's great. But equally, we've got businesses to run and work to do. So I think, maybe people are becoming more picky with their time. We're hosting actually 2 events this week, and we've got one in London tomorrow morning and one in Manchester on Wednesday morning, and those are there. It's a face-to-face round table event with our clients, and we could have really easily just filmed it and sent it out. But I think the value that we'll get from being around those people and seeing them again after 18 months, will be great, and will be so much more than what we'd get if it was just kind of a
Yeah,
Zoom.
absolutely. And I mean, there's loads of stuff to pick up on that. But something, and little anecdote I will give you, is I was hired during the pandemic. So when I've been into the office lately, I've met some people for the first time. And when you see a celebrity somewhere and you talk yourself out of the fact that it might be that person, I've done that with my colleagues. I'm like, should I say hello? Do you know what I mean? And it's so silly, but it is so different seeing people in the flesh and actually talking to them and reading body language and creating those relationships. So
Yeah.
I think while face-to-face events might decline in the sense that there'll be less of them, it's still really important to take your time and go to. But something else that you said there as well was like, if there's an event in town in the evening, you might have to sacrifice the gym, your time poor. And again, that all factors into your overall well-being. So we're talking here about social well-being as a positive thing, and networking for social well-being. But when does networking get too much? When can that be negative on your social well-being?
I think it's about knowing yourself, and I think it's about not pushing yourself to a limit, and knowing if you are tired, and actually you'd be better off going to the gym, or there's different priorities. I think it's prioritizing essentially. This week I know that I will get to Friday and probably feel pretty burnt out because I've absolutely packed it all in, and that's not a normal week for me, because normally I will kind of be a bit kinder to myself. So I think it's just knowing yourself and knowing like when enough is enough, because it does take your energy, and it's also you've got to factor in your life around that. But like we said, it's networking might not just be going into a town event. It could actually be you've met someone at an event and you meet them for a coffee on a Friday morning, and actually that's a kind of slower pace. It's less that less adrenaline than you maybe would get from going to a face-to-face event. Because I think you do use a different type of energy depending on especially if you feel out of your comfort zone, you're going to burn more. There's more adrenaline, and you're probably going to feel more tired. So I think it's about kind of prioritizing and knowing how it will make you feel, and then kind of not putting in a mad day after you've been to 3 networking events or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty guilty of doing this in sort of my home life as well. I'll say yes to everything because I think I don't want to let people down, or I feel like, oh, well, I've got to go to the gym, but I've said I'll see my friend, and then I'm going to go see my mum as well, and I'll pack loads of stuff in. And while I think I'm being some incredible social butterfly, I am burning myself out. So it is interesting to see the other side of that. But also when you see as you're doing it for the good of your career or the good of your business, I imagine it's even harder to separate those two sort of things. Has there ever been a time where you may have thought, oh, well, it's good for my career, it's good for my business, and then actually in reflection you've gone, whoa, my life is actually more important than that?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I burnt out just before August, and it was very much that I was kind of hadn't had a break, and I was pushing myself in work to kind of keep going to certain events and keep going to I felt like I had to do everything. I had to, especially because the business hadn't, we had suffered as an industry and a business because of the pandemic. We were finally coming out the other side, and I was pushing myself so much that it got to the point where, to be quite honest, I wasn't really enjoying work as much as I should. And and there were especially times where I knew that I shouldn't be going to a client meeting, for instance, because I didn't feel great. And I actually, I suffer from like a panic disorder. So when I do feel really overwhelmed and really stressed, and when I'm tired, I have this feeling of I feel like I'm going to faint, and it always comes in when I'm going to client meetings if I'm feeling like that. And there was a time before August where I was pushing myself to go to these client meetings because I had to, in my mind, had to go to these meetings because obviously they would result in, roles and business. But those meetings I felt awful in, and actually then it kind of would have got to a point, if I hadn't have taken a break, that I'd have just been going through this vicious cycle. And actually I went away and I switched my phone off for the first time since I've had the business for a week, and now I feel like a totally different person. But I think it can be detrimental, and obviously then you're not yourself either, or I'm certainly not in those situations. So I think there's definitely a time where, and I suppose I'm trying to become better personally at saying no to things, and actually taking joy out of saying no, as opposed to kind of, like you say, overcommitting, because I think it's so easy to do and so easy to pack stuff in, and then you end up, there's a fine line, I suppose.
Yeah, and well, that story itself is a great testament to how being honest with yourself is so important. And thanks so much for your honesty there, because it's not easy to talk about, especially as the owner of a business. People I imagine people look up to you and think, wow, look at everything she's doing, look at all these plates she's spinning. But actually, burnout culture is not popular anymore. People aren't necessarily impressed by it anymore. It's looking after yourself and taking care of your well-being is so important, because, as you say, if you're not firing on all cylinders because you've not had that break, your work's not going to be as good, and eventually you are just going to feel like worse about yourself.
Definitely.
So, we've got bogged down in a bit of negativity there, but it's important to speak about, because it can happen. But if we've got a few more minutes left, but if we can end this on a high.
Absolutely.
Working session, or you have met someone that's really changed your mind about something, what are those positive feelings and how can it impact your overall well-being?
Yeah, I think that when you've had those meetings and you've had a good conversation with someone, I think that it gives, again, depending on your personality type, but I think pretty much, most people will feel more energetic, you feel more pumped up if after a good conversation and you've and a good networking event, which makes you feel happier, makes you feel more focused. And I think it just gives you that sense of purpose, to meet people that you feel that maybe share the same values as you, or share, or even from an employee perspective, working within a business that you then you share that business's values. I think it just gives you that kind of sense of belonging and sense of purpose.
No, I completely agree. And we discussed before the call that we're both Aries. So Aries, by characteristics, personable, we make relationships. And I feel the exact same as you. I love coming home from a really good networking event and thinking, right, that's great. I've got to add them on LinkedIn. They were so interesting, or I really think what they're doing within their company is worthwhile, and I'd like to learn more about it. And it does make you feel good. And I can say that as a personal experience from my personality type. But even if you are a bit quieter than the two of us, which can be easy, I imagine, then I imagine it's just nice to get out, come out your shell and understand things about other people, in whatever capacity that may be. What would you say to somebody who might not be as confident in growing their business network or social well-being regarding work? What would be your, let's say, top bit of advice?
I think that networking events can be quite intimidating, and even as someone that is quite sociable, I certainly have in the past felt intimidated by some events. And actually, I'm probably an introverted extrovert. I'm not kind of someone that loves to go and kind of work a room or anything like that. So I definitely can see how for someone that is more introverted, it would be, potentially a face-to-face might not be kind of the go-to. But I think, my advice would be to reach out to people and just ask for, even if it's a Zoom or a Teams call, that if you didn't feel as confident to kind of meet in person, or just to meet for a coffee with someone that you feel like you might connect with. And even, it doesn't need to be, a really big meeting, but I would just, try and reach out to people within your industry or, you know, your kind of line of work, because I also think that, yeah, there's such great value from people that are going through a similar journey, as opposed to potentially our friends outside of work, where they might be kind of, you know, great friends, but not as, you know, not understand what we're going through. So I think, yeah, kind of looking out for, or doing whatever you feel comfortable. But equally, I know there's great, you know, I often look at like the Manchester Young Professionals Network, like they now do, you know, they do like Barry's boot camps together, and like I think that would be great, you know, even if you're into your fitness, and actually you might just get chatting to someone in the changing room or in kind of before you go into Barry's, but actually there's not the pressure of having to go into an empty room and like network and hand your business card out. I think there's so many kind of less conventional ways to network nowadays than maybe kind of a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people think networking and they think either LinkedIn or PowerPoints. So it's nice to know that there are these organizations out there that can just help people network in a more organic way. So, well, my advice to people would be look at these within your local community, within your industry, and see if there's anything you can join. And you're not going to be the only new person there, and everybody was new at some point. So
yeah,
just take a bit of a leap of faith and see how it goes. But with these meetings I have with people, the time absolutely flies. So I'm going to have to say goodbye to you. But thank you so much for your expertise on that, and thank you for being so honest about the time when you felt quite taken over by trying to be too social. And I think that is a really important point that you brought up that I'd not necessarily thought of at the beginning. So thank you very much for contributing that specifically to this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
No worries. I'll hopefully speak to you very soon.
Definitely.
Social wellbeing is about a sense of community and social groups. This includes our work life. Having good social wellbeing is incredibly important within business, as your work life can have a huge impact on your personal life. Being happy at work helps you to be happy outside of work. Be selective with how you use your time. How is it fulfilling you? What are you getting from it? And don't just be a yes person. Use your energy for what is going to be good for you. We've learned today that even inspirational boss lady Lily has struggled with her panic disorder at times due to feeling burnt out and saying yes to too many social commitments. Social wellbeing can affect everybody, and it can affect how you feel in many different ways. Burnout culture isn't cool. Prioritise your wellbeing by being honest with yourself. There will be a Series 2 announced soon, so please keep your eyes peeled, and for the very last time, thank you for listening to the WorkLife